Okay, let's dive into something really profound today. What if I told you that finding incredible deep peace wasn't about avoiding suffering, but about experiencing it so intensely that something completely new emerged right from the other side?
Hmm.
That's really the heart of the journey we're exploring in this deep dive. We've got these fascinating excerpts from the introduction of a powerful book, sharing one person's really radical transformation.
Absolutely. And it's a
Mhm.
journey that, starts in a place of intense, almost continuous anxiety and depression
Yeah.
and leads to this enduring state of peace.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to really unpack that transformation story, how it unfolded, what it felt like from the inside, and uh, crucially, how that intense personal experience became the foundation for a book designed to help you discover that same potential within yourself.
And there's this single, almost strange moment right at the center of it all, this kind of aha that triggered everything.
Mm-hmm.
The source talks about a thought they had about living with oneself. It sounds simple, maybe, but it unlocks something incredible. Let's unpack this. So, the source paints this picture of life before this turning point. Up until about age 30, it was, well, frankly, pretty brutal.
Yeah.
We're talking pervasive anxiety, punctuated by these debilitating periods of suicidal depression.
It's described in the source as feeling, looking back like it was a past lifetime, or even like they were talking about someone else entirely. That level of disconnect and suffering,
Mm.
it was just immense.
Wow.
It wasn't just fleeting sadness. It was like the fabric of daily life for them.
Right. And the source says this built to a real crisis point around age 29. Waking up one morning, not just with anxiety, but with this absolute, um, unprecedented dread.
Yes, they describe everything feeling alien, hostile, utterly meaningless. The silence of the night, the shapes of the furniture in the dark room, even distant sounds, all perceived through this lens of deep loathing for the world.
And even more intensely, a loathing for their own existence. The source says the burden of this misery, the constant inner struggle, it led to a longing for annihilation that actually became stronger than the desire to live. That is an incredibly dark place to be.
It really is. And it was precisely in this state, right on the edge of giving up completely, that
Yeah.
the pivotal moment occurred. The source says the thought just kept repeating in their mind, I cannot live with myself any longer.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The source says the key wasn't the thought itself, but the sudden awareness of how, well, peculiar that thought was.
Uh-huh.
I cannot live with myself.
Exactly. That simple phrase implies a split, doesn't it? There's an I and there's a self that this I can't stand living with. This awareness triggered the question, am I one or two?
Yes. And then the truly profound possibility arises. Maybe only one of them is real. What an idea, right?
Right.
That maybe this self I'm so miserable living with isn't the real me at all.
And the source says, being absolutely stunned by that realization,
Yeah.
the mind stopped. Just like that.
The thinking stopped.
The relentless stream of thought ceased. Yeah. But, and this is key, full consciousness remained. There was awareness, presence, just without the mental noise.
Okay, and then what?
What's fascinating is the description of the immediate physical and energetic experience that followed. A feeling of being drawn into a vortex of energy, starting slow, then accelerating.
Whoa.
Intense fear arose. The body began shaking uncontrollably.
And amidst that fear and shaking, they heard words, as if spoken from deep inside their chest. Resist nothing.
Powerful instruction in that moment, isn't it?
Mhm.
And they followed it. The source describes feeling sucked into a void, but crucially, it felt like this void was inside themselves, not outside.
Inside, okay.
And as this happened, the fear disappeared. They
Mm.
just let go. And then no memory of what happened next.
Which leads us to the awakening described in the source, woken by a bird chirping outside the window, a sound they'd never really heard or perceived like this before.
The source uses this incredible metaphor, hearing it even with eyes closed, as the sound a precious diamond would make. That clarity, the beauty, just captures the intensity of the sensory experience.
Wow. And then opening their eyes, seeing the first light of dawn filtering through the curtains. And the source says they knew, not with thought, but with this deep inner certainty, that there was infinitely more to light than we normally perceive.
Mm,
Feeling that soft luminosity wasn't just seeing light, it was experiencing love itself.
tears came naturally.
Mm.
And walking around that familiar room, looking at ordinary things, a pencil, an empty bottle,
Mm.
they saw them as if for the very first time.
How so?
Just Fresh, pristine, beautiful, intensely alive.
It wasn't a room of objects, it was a room full of miracles. The source describes walking around the city that day in utter amazement at the sheer miracle of life, feeling like they had just been born into this world.
And this state wasn't fleeting either. The source recounts 5 months of uninterrupted deep peace and bliss.
5 months. That's incredible.
Yeah. It diminished slightly after that, but only because it sort of integrated and became their natural way of being, not like a temporary high.
They could still function in the world, do everyday things, but the internal sense was that nothing they could do could possibly add to the state of fulfillment they already had. That suggests a really radical shift, doesn't it, in where happiness comes from?
Totally. If we connect this back to that core insight, the I and the self, the source later understood, after reading spiritual texts and spending time with teachers, that this intense suffering had created a kind of pressure cooker.
Right.
This pressure had forced consciousness to withdraw its energy, its identification from that unhappy, fearful self.
And understanding that this self wasn't actually real, the source calls it a fiction of the mind.
Exactly. And because consciousness withdrew so completely, this false suffering self just collapsed instantly.
Collapsed.
Like pulling the plug from an inflatable toy, as the source vividly puts it. And what was left? The source says it was their true nature. The ever-present I am, consciousness in its pure state before it gets entangled with any form, any story, any mental construct.
And later they learned to consciously access that inner dimension they first experienced as a void, what they call the timeless or deathless realm. The source describes experiencing states of indescribable bliss and sacredness, even deeper than the original awakening.
This is where the story takes another powerful turn, I think, in terms of real-world implications. The source talks about a period where they had absolutely nothing on the physical plane, like no relationships, no job, no home, no social identity at all.
And yet they spent nearly 2 years sitting on park benches, but not in despair, in a state of the most intense joy.
Wow.
This really challenges our conventional ideas of what is necessary for happiness, doesn't it? It highlights that the source of their joy was purely internal.
Exactly. And the source notes that while beautiful experiences might come and go, that underlying undercurrent of peace has never left since that pivotal night. Sometimes it's very palpable, even felt by others. Other times it's quietly in the background like a constant hum.
And this enduring state is what led to the book we're discussing. People would notice this presence, this peace, and occasionally approach the source asking, I want what you have, how can I get it?
And the consistent answer given was, you have it already. You just can't feel it because your mind is making too much noise.
Mind noise. That's a key concept here, isn't it?
Definitely.
This simple, profound answer about existing internal peace being obscured by mental chatter is what eventually grew into the book. And before they knew it, the source had a new external identity. They had become a spiritual teacher.
The book, according to the source, is really the essence of their work with spiritual seekers over a decade. The author expresses deep gratitude for these people, their courage to look within, their willingness to question, their challenging questions, and their readiness to listen.
They're characterized as a small but growing group of spiritual pioneers, essentially breaking free from the inherited collective mind patterns that have kept humans locked in suffering for so long.
Right. The purpose of the book, then, is twofold. Primarily, to find those who are genuinely ready for this kind of radical inner transformation and act as a catalyst for it.
But also to reach others who might not be ready yet, to simply sow a seed of enlightenment that could potentially sprout later in their lives. It's playing the long game, in a way.
Exactly. The format of the book itself is interesting, too, stemming directly from its origin. It apparently arose spontaneously from questions asked in seminars, classes, and counseling sessions.
Which is why it naturally took on this question and answer structure. The source mentions some parts are verbatim transcripts, some are combined or generic questions, and sometimes entirely new, deeper insights emerged during the writing process itself.
What's particularly insightful is how the source describes the dialogues in the book, alternating between two distinct levels.
Okay, what are those levels?
Level 1, they say, is about drawing your attention to what is false within you. It addresses human unconsciousness, our dysfunction, and how that manifests in conflict and suffering in the world. This knowledge is crucial, the source stresses, because unless you learn to recognize these patterns as not you, you'll inevitably be pulled back into illusion and pain. This level helps you see these false aspects without making them a personal problem, just observing them for what they are.
Got it. Recognizing the false as false.
There you
And
go.
level 2.
And then level 2. This speaks directly to a profound transformation of human consciousness that the source says is available now, not some distant future possibility.
Right now.
That's the claim. This level provides guidance on how to actually free yourself from what the source calls mind enslavement, that incessant mind noise we mentioned, and how to enter into this enlightened state, and importantly, how to sustain it in your everyday life.
Okay, that's a big promise. How does the book try to do that?
Well, the source explains that on level 2, the words are used differently. They're not just giving you information. They're designed to draw you into this new consciousness as you read.
Draw you in.
Yeah, to actually take you into that timeless state of conscious presence in the now. They want to give you a taste of enlightenment directly through the words themselves.
So the language itself is meant to be transformative.
That's the idea. This means these passages might feel repetitive initially if you're reading only with your thinking mind.
But the source suggests once you begin to experience what they're pointing to, you'll feel their spiritual power. These might become the most rewarding parts of the book because they speak to something deeper than the thinking mind.
It's described as addressing the knower in you, that deeper self behind the thinking mind, who recognizes the spiritual truth being conveyed immediately, intuitively.
And for you, the reader, the source even includes a specific pause symbol after certain passages.
Oh yeah, the Sexton.
Right. It's a suggestion to stop, put the book down, be still, and actually feel or experience the truth of what was just said in your own being. That's really emphasizing direct experience over just intellectual understanding.
It is. The source offers some practical advice for reading, too. Words like being or presence might seem abstract or unclear at first. Don't get hung up on them. Just keep reading.
Okay.
Questions you have might answer themselves later, or they might simply become irrelevant as you read with more depth, with more feeling.
They really emphasize reading not just with your intellect, but looking for a feeling response, a sense of recognition or resonance from deep within you.
Because the author's perspective is that they can't tell you any spiritual truth that you don't already know deep within yourself. All you can do is use words to remind you, and that reminder can then activate the living knowledge that's already inside you.
Which leads to an important point about language. The source cautions against getting caught up in comparing the specific terminology, use words like mind, happiness, consciousness, things like that, with other teachings.
Right, because these words might be used in a very specific, unique way within the book.
And, perhaps most importantly, don't get attached to the words themselves. The source says they are simply stepping stones. Once they've served their purpose of pointing you towards the truth, you can leave them behind.
The use of quotes from figures like Jesus, Buddha, or texts like A Course in Miracles is also explained in an interesting way. It's not about comparing different religions or philosophy.
What's the purpose then?
No, it's about highlighting that there is, in essence, only one timeless spiritual teaching. It's just been expressed in many different forms throughout history.
Oh, okay.
The source believes the spiritual essence of many ancient religions has been obscured over time by, extraneous dogma or interpretation.
So, by quoting them, the intention is to reveal the deeper meaning and restore the transformative power within those traditions, especially for people who already identify with them.
Exactly. It's a way of saying, look, the truth you seek isn't somewhere else. Let me show you how to find it deeper within the path you're already on.
That makes sense.
And finally, the source mentions intentionally using neutral terminology as much as possible to be accessible to a wide audience, regardless of their background. This book is presented not as theory or speculation, but as a restatement of that one timeless teaching, specifically for our current time.
It comes directly from the one true source within, as the author puts it, speaking from inner experience.
Yep.
And they sometimes use forceful language specifically to cut through the mental resistance, that mind noise, and reach that place within you where you already know the truth being spoken.
The source describes this leading to a feeling of exaltation, a heightened aliveness, where something inside you just resonates and says, yes, I recognize this. This is true.
It really is an invitation to look inward, isn't it?
Absolutely. It fundamentally is.
So we've traced this incredible journey from the depths of despair to an enduring, unshakable peace, sparked by a single thought about the nature of self, and ultimately leading to a book designed to be a catalyst for others. It's a powerful narrative, yeah, demonstrating that radical inner transformation is profoundly possible, and that the deep peace, the truth, the enlightened state we often feel is something to be chased or acquired externally, It's actually something already present within us.
Right.
It's just often buried under the relentless noise and stories of our own minds.
Which leaves us with something pretty significant to ponder, I think.
Hmm.
If this self the author struggled with was a fiction of the mind, what does it mean for you listening to distinguish between the I that is aware and the self you typically identify with?
Hmm.
Or, put another way, how might what the author calls mind noise be preventing you from experiencing a deeper peace or truth that could already be present within you right now? Something to reflect on as you go about your day.